My name is Shahin Rahimifard. I'm a member of a center called Center for a Smart, which stands for Sustainable Manufacturing and Recycling Technologies in UK. This afternoon, in a very short time that we have, I'm going to share a vision on net positive approach. And I'm sure that you have come across this. Basically, it's trying to take the challenge and aspiration of net zero into the next stage and saying whether the net zero is good enough, and if not, what do we need to do? I hope to be able to answer a few questions at the end. I will sharing a lot of materials, having to go through them very quickly because of shortage of time. But if you're interested on the subject, please get in touch with me. I send you further materials or organize a time for us to have a chat. So in the presentation, focus on four things. What do we do with, at Center for Smart and why we start thinking about net positive? We did a project between 2010 to 2020, and that was about envisaging the future of manufacturing at 2020. I'm going to tell you a bit about that, and then sort of zoom in on net positive manufacturing, finish with a few concluding remarks. So we've been sort of working at Loughborough for a very long time. In fact, as long as I start telling my students how long, because they keep telling me this is before I was born. So Centre was formally sort of established in 2004. We've been involved in more than 30 projects, as you can see, across the whole life cycle of the products, all the way from design to the end of life. And we've been active in different sectors: automotive, electrical, electronic, apparel, footwear, food, and we are now moving into healthcare. So our expertise is in sustainability and using their tools, and we believe there is lots of transferable knowledge from sector to sector, and work on sharing that knowledge. So the whole concept of net positive is around this research question: is a less bad solution good enough? And we've been looking at collecting information as part of that project on envisaging the future, and looking at benefits that we've received from our recent initiatives. And the story is not very good in that we know that we're harming the environment. We have started doing various things. There's an international commitment. Some of those are listed down here. I was going to actually add COP26 into this, but I couldn't remember what was the significance that came out of COP26. So in reality, we need to sort of change the direction of this net impact. Some people say going towards net zero, but the problem with the net zero is that all of the damages that we cause still would be there, and it would exaggerate by the time that we get into 2030, 2035. So this project on envisaging the manufacturing in 2050 was what are we going to find in 2050 in the area of manufacturing, and what methodology, tools, and processes we need. Well, the studies show that at the moment and for the last few years, all of the sort of a focus in manufacturing study has been reducing the cost and giving consumer what they want. What that has created, and now everybody is aware of it, is this cracks in manufacturing industry, depletion of resources, carbon emissions, climate change, global warming, and so on. What's more worrying is that people kind of think sustainability is a patch-up job, that it comes and sorts everything out. But the result of this 10-year project that we've done, involving many hundreds of organizations, both nationally and internationally, was that we need to do a root cause analysis and change direction. And we should accept that the current pattern of mass production of cheaply produced goods and overconsumption of this product just simply cannot be sustained. So we need to have a look at not a slightly better alternative manufacturing scenarios. We need to look at a totally different manufacturing scenario. So to form the view of what these alternative manufacturing should look like, we looked at what we call a change drivers on looking at resources, looking at pollution and climate change. And because we are looking so far in the future, 2050, quite clearly we couldn't consider just the one possible future. So we did a bit of a scenario planning. And the scenario planning was around this, looking at our environmental impact on our resource depletion, which I'm sure you agree in manufacturing is among the most concerning developments. So that gives us 4 quadrants, and that if you stay in the quadrant where you have a high rate of resource depletion and high environmental impact, it means consumerism has carried on. Eco-efficiency of our activities is still very low. On the other hand, we want to switch this into low consumerism and very effective technology. And then there are these other 2 quadrants that worth considering that, well, yes, we've improved our technology, but we're still using a lot of products. So our resource depletion is still high, but our environmental impact may have reduced. And the other alternative is that obviously the consumerism is a slowdown, but the eco-efficiency hasn't. So it's still our environmental impact is high. We develop a number of narratives for each of these scenarios. So the scenario of really where we're heading at the moment is on sustainable planet. Where we want to go is this sustainable planet, and where we rely on technology to get us out of this hole that we dug for ourselves. We call that technologically sustained planet, and the other is a socio-economically sustained planet. So there is a huge story about what's involved in these narratives and what needs to be met and stuff. But the shortest story of it is we want to go from unsustainable to sustainable. Unfortunately, that's not like a flicking a switch and sleep tonight and tomorrow morning we end up in a sustainable planet. In most of the cases, the solutions are either through technological advancement that hopes to lead us to the sustainability. But what we find in most of the study and reviews that we've done, that there is this vicious circle that we improve the technology but use more of it. And that sort of takes us into this quadrant, back to that quadrant because of this increased consumption. The socio-economically sustained planet is not much better. There are ways and reasons and various things where consumption drops. The common obviously being pandemic, consumption of lots of things drops, impact from transportation being mainly notable. But what happens is very quickly we come out of that and again take the same route into unsustainable consumption, and we just simply forget all of the reasons that we did that. So the real breakthrough is got to be where we moved, where from the technologically sustained planet, i.e. where the technology is advanced, to use it in the right way to move towards sustainable planet. And equally, when the consumption has been addressed, find ways that rather than increasing the consumption, so for example, at the moment, the cost of living sort of crisis is a top of agenda for a lot of people, rightly so. And the answer for a lot of companies and even the government, dare I say, is that for the people to go and invest more or spend more, creating more economic growth, more jobs, and that, which is again taking us back to that vicious circle of moving us back into a sustainable planet. So we should, when we technologically advanced, use that technology in the right way. And when we have an understanding of how we can address this consumption, try to find ourselves towards the sustainable planet as opposed to going back to where we were. So how are we going to do this? And this is something that we've been working in the last 5 or 6 years. The concept is net positive manufacturing. I think net positive is a concept used in many different sectors, and we're trying to apply that into manufacturing. And in reality, this is where the starting slide was about, in that we need to look at an alternative future, not just one that is a slightly better. Okay, so at the moment, the definition of manufacturing in most cases is the converting of raw material to the products in the larger scale. So if you are doing that, if you have a process that is doing that, making some money for us, then we are happy that everything is working. But in reality, we've seen all of those problems, and now we are trying to, in fact, change the definition of manufacturing in that net positive world, in a view that you only borrow temporarily some resources to address a need, and then you have capability, technology, resources, equipment to return that resources into the resource bank for further use. Now, you may actually feel that this is very much similar to that circularity or circular economy. There is a lot more than a circular economy in this vision, as we'll see in the next slide. In reality, what we're trying to achieve is a concept called immortal resources, where resources are on continuous and ever-present circulation without having to sort of either mining for new ones or trying to rely on renewable resources, which it has its own sort of implication. So what do we do? We've been looking at all of the sort of methodological requirements, the organizational changes, the socio-ethical challenges and technological challenges that we need to go from our current pattern of manufacturing into a net positive. Now, this has been an extensive process. There is huge background, dare I say, a publication beyond each of these boxes. So I will not be going through all of them. You'll be glad to hear. I thought that, in reality, for the audience and the interest, perhaps I should focus on these methodological challenges and then technological challenges of this net positive manufacturing. So on the methodological challenges, our approach in manufacturing or manufacturing methodology and strategy is shown to have these four attributes. An adaptive behavior, I think, is self-explanatory. Remember, these are being developed 5 or 6 years ago, but now we're seeing it even more and more, mainly because of pandemic and some of the issues that we've had in our supply chain. The issue of resilience is become very important in recent years and stuff. The idea that we will have a manufacturing system that can have the exact same material over 20 or 30 years making the same product is just not sort of sustainable. It's not possible, feasible. We will have variation in material. We will have different yield, different availability at a different time. So our systems has to be adaptive to these changes and be able to live in a changeable world. It should have this restorative behavior, which is possibly one of the most important attributes of net positive, in that we have seen and have examples that the technology is not available for us to be able to make what we need, but at the same time to restore the damages that we cause by making that product. It's just about whether the intentions are there. So, for example, in terms of air pollution or water pollution, we use airs and we emit sort of pollutions to the airs. We use water, abstract either fresh water or rainwater, and then we use it and we get it as a sort of wastewater, either discharge it into water systems or in very a few cases we recycle it. But it is within our power, within our kind of filtration, refining technologies, current, these are not future things, that we can actually, make the water or refine the water to a better quality that we actually start using them before we're releasing it into a system. So this restorative behavior is looking at manufacturing as a building block that actually purifies, improves the quality of its surrounding rather than degrading the quality of its surrounding. Regenerative goes back to the biorenewable, and we know that there is a lot of hope on replacing some of the depleting process with this renewable products, but they have their own challenges. So the concept of sustainable foresting and farming and stuff has become now embedded in a lot of our understanding that we cannot just grow and use things because of all of the big problems. So we have to have this regenerative behavior. And one that is now become part of this digitalization of manufacturing is the idea of self-healing behavior. Now, the self-healing behavior refers to ability to be able to sense when something is going wrong rather than many months afterwards and be able to correct your behavior. I'm sure you've heard all of the sort of recent developments on AI and censoring around this. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I just wanted to refer to it that everything that we talked about, those capabilities that we need, it is within our grasp. It is just about extending our aspiration beyond the net zero, because there's no point having aspiration we know is not good enough for the next 30 years and then realize right. In fact, it was something else that we need to do. Dare I say, this has been the journey that we've followed. So all of those industry now 5.0, not 4.0, the idea of 3D printing, bionic manufacturing, holonic manufacturing. For those of you who are interested, as I said, send me an email and I will send you some information. So I'm going to finish now with a few concluding remarks. What we obviously we are where we just buried our head in the sand and said challenges, what challenges? Now we say or claim that we are aware of the challenges, but they still set our aspiration into something that we know is awfully sort of and grossly miss where we need to be in terms of our targets. So we have to ask these questions just how many times before we actually get to the point to say that, you know, we cannot sort of bury your head in the sand and assume that these challenges is going to be sorted itself out in 2030, 2050. At the heart of it, you can do lots of things in manufacturing. You can have a lot of intelligent product, but you have to actually influence behavior. You know, you could have electrical cars, but there's lots of impact on the electrical cars if you're taking a dog for a walking with it. So that's the sort of a challenge that we have. Why do we have and be bothered and try to have that aspirational net positive? We do not inherit the earth from our ancestor, we borrow it from our children. So it is our duty to do that. I've talked about a lot of work. I think I like to finish with the acknowledgement of our group at Center for a Smart. They've been involved in one way or another in some of the projects that I mentioned. They share a same sort of a vision. We just feel a less bad solution is not good enough. And we right now have to start moving towards more aspirational. Thank you for your attention. And hopefully there are a few minutes for a Q&A.